The biography of Liz Truss has been the most talked about political book of the year, but you might say for all the wrong reasons. Even Slippery Stummer used it as a punchline at Truss's final PMQs last month.
A book is being written about the Prime Minister's time in office. Apparently it's going to be out by Christmas. Is that the release date or the title?
Well, of course, it was actually a lot sooner than Christmas. So out of the blue, the inside story of the unexpected rise and rapid fall of Liz Truss quickly changed from political biography to political obituary as the Truss premiership blew up at extraordinary speed. But despite the book's hastily rewritten ending, it's still packed full of fascinating insider revelations about Britain's shortest Prime Minister's doomed stint in number 10. And I'm joined now by the book's co-author, diary editor at The Spectator, James Heale. So, James, one of the most telling revelations in this book was that Truss sobbed as she sacked her longtime ally and friend, really, although we'll come to that in just a moment, Kwasi Kwarteng, as Chancellor. And it's so fascinating, James, because take me inside that moment, because here is this woman who has got the job that she always dreamed of. She has to stab her best mate in the back, and probably by that point she still knows it's not going to save her.
Well, this is the thing. I mean, Liz Truss and Kwasi Kwarteng entered Parliament on the same day together in 2010. They'd spent the best part of 10 years plotting and scheming and thinking together. They formed a backbench group of MPs together. During lockdown, they went on walks together in Greenwich Park, discussing all of this. And finally, they get into number 10. She puts him into number 11 as Chancellor, and they work on this mini budget together. There's lots of questions now about who's to blame, who's not to blame. But the point is they were working hand in glove together. And unfortunately, the mini budget just lands disastrously. It takes them too long to realise that. And it ends with her feeling like she has to sacrifice him, and her turning to her and say, you do realise, you know, after me, they're going to come for you next. And she says, Kwasi, they're already coming for me. And that really was the end of 12 years of friendship and close alliance together, and just shows the brutal nature of the top of British politics.
No, indeed, it does. James, you also revealed that during the leadership campaign, which obviously took place over the summer, there was actually lots of speculation flying around. I had heard it about Truss's personal life. There was a dirty dossier, you say, prepared by her political enemies. And that reportedly included, as you mentioned in the book, allegations of an affair with Kwarteng, which was a long-standing Westminster rumour, but they both strenuously deny it, James. Sunak apparently didn't want to use any of this stuff as part of his campaign. But what can you tell us? Because I have to be honest, James, and you know I supported Truss during the leadership campaign. I feel like they were out to get this woman from the start, with a lot of unfounded speculation about her personal life.
Yeah, I think it's to Sunak's credit, from what we can ascertain, was that although some people who were supporting him or purporting to support him at the time, that he never himself had any personal truck with this, but there were MPs supporting him who wanted to make political capital out of this. I think, look, I mean, Liz Truss is someone who's got the skin of a rhino when it comes to this kind of thing, and she's put up with a lot over the years. But we felt like there was important points to address in some of the speculation, and reached a certain point where it was important to contextualise what was going on. But as you say, I think that the point is, all these people would often come up with this stuff, supporters of one candidate or another, or a rival candidate, and they'd say, well, why haven't this been run, etc. Well, there's probably a good reason for that, was that none of this stuff was true. And so over the years you hear this various kind of stuff, but that's the reason why it remained in a dodgy dossier rather than being printed anywhere, was because, frankly, no one could find the supportive evidence to go forward with these theories.
James, you say she has the skin of a rhino, but whatever you think of her politically, what Liz Truss has just been put through on a human level is absolutely devastating. It's something that she might never get over. Now, she agreed to meet with you in the course of your preparation of the book. What was her state of mind? How do you think she was coping psychologically with the incoming?
So we met her twice during the book, one of which was before she became Prime Minister. The other was when it was just at the beginning of her premiership. So really before it all started to go wrong. But I think, she was someone who knew her own mind, who'd come off a summer where she had, I think, continually been underestimated in Westminster from a lot of people outside her own party. And so she'd won. And so I think she felt somewhat vindicated, confident. And I think the danger, perhaps in retrospect, was that she was a little too confident over what she did. But she was very sure of her own mind. And I think she probably felt that her instincts had been vindicated. She was part of that 2010 intake, an intake of lots of future, I think it was about 24 future cabinet ministers who sat around that table who entered on Parliament on that same day. And she'd beaten them all. She'd beaten the likes of Sajid Javid, beaten the likes of Gavin Williamson. So when we spoke to her, she was very confident and relaxed and knew her own mind. We were going to have a subsequent third interview, but subsequently that fell through because of everything that just happened to go wrong. And obviously the book ended up being, a little bit ending on a different note than perhaps we might have originally intended. When I thought through her...
What she didn't maybe factor in was how much some of those men who you just mentioned were such sore losers, were never going to do what was right for the country, and were never going to do actually what was right for the Conservative Party and get behind her, James, because they were stabbing her in the back from the moment she entered number 10.
Well, this is the point. One of the points you make at the end of the book is, look, however it had gone, there were people who felt very bitterly about that. And I think the Tory party right now is a party after 12 years, Brexit, COVID, all the different factions, where some of these people they're just not willing to work with whoever is leader. I would say there's the dispossessed and never possessed. I think you've got about sort of 60 ex-ministers sitting at any one time on the back benches, etc. So I think it would be very difficult for a politician of the highest calibre to try and get that all together. And I'm interested to see how Rishi Sunak will deal with that. Obviously, we've got the 17th of November, the statement coming up, but I question whether any politician, even the highest caliber, can keep the people together. And I think Liz Truss was never someone afraid to shake things up. And unfortunately for her, she just had too many enemies at one point, and that's what led to her downfall.
Now, of course, James, we can't finish without getting the story behind Liz Truss's infamous pork market speech at the Conservative Party conference in 2014. So she was Environment Secretary at the time. Let's just remind ourselves of her greatest hits that day.
We import 2/3 of our cheese. That is a disgrace. In December, I'll be in Beijing, opening up new pork markets. And I will not rest until the British apple is back at the top of the tree.
But James, there is a deliberately untold truth behind that speech, isn't there, which you reveal in the book?
Yeah, first of all, let's just say, obviously it's funny, we're watching it now. You were just playing Have I Got News For You, and that's what made her famous. This whole thing went viral, but she can laugh at it, which is something quite refreshing. You all know about pompous politicians. Liz Truss's own daughters play it to her as a meme, and she's laughed at it in meetings. And I think that's some of the personal side, which I think people didn't often get to see, partly because the premiership was so short. But yeah, completely. She was someone who was a product at the time. She was a bit uncertain. She was only, I think, 38 at the time, 39 at the time when she was in the cabinet, and she was sort of over-prepared in terms of this CCHQ trading. And obviously, she had a serious meeting, but obviously it came across on television very different to the whole. At the time, it got good write-ups, but as you can see in retrospect, it became something of one of the early political memes, and even 8 years on, it's something we all still chuckle about.
Well, look, it's a fascinating book, a very small chapter in British politics, but worth telling all the same. James Heale, author of Out of the Blue, the inside story of the unexpected rise and rapid fall of Liz Truss. That rapid fall part was added, as you can imagine.